It was a Sunday I'll never forget. The kind of day that makes you grateful for life's simple pleasures, warm weather, family time, and the smell of burgers sizzling on the grill. My twins were playing in the backyard pool, laughing, splashing, wearing their floaties. It was pure happiness. I was halfway through flipping a burger when the sound of screaming shattered the peace. Get out. Get out of the pool right now. This is a liability. At first, I thought maybe it was a neighbor yelling at their dog, or maybe even kids fighting down the street. But then I heard it again, louder and unmistakably directed at us. I turned around and froze. There she was. Karen. And no, not just a Karen in the mean sense. I mean the Karen, vice president of our HOA, clipboard in hand, standing in my backyard like she owned the place. Her face was scrunched in disapproval, sunglasses halfway down her nose, mouth twisted like she'd just bitten into a lemon. She was fully clothed in beige slacks and a floral blouse that looked like it belonged in a retirement brochure, not pool attire. She was standing barely 2 feet from the water, pointing at my kids, screaming as if they were criminals. I dropped the spatula. "Excuse me?" I asked, stepping forward. "What are you doing in my backyard?" She turned toward me slowly, like some kind of villain in a soap opera. "Your pool is out of HOA compliance. I'm shutting it down. It's a risk to the community." I blinked in disbelief. "What? Risk to what community? This is my private property." But she didn't even flinch. Instead, she whipped out her phone and began snapping pictures. Of my pool. Of my kids. Of me. "Hey, you can't take pictures of my children without permission," I said, my voice rising now. Karen just rolled her eyes. "When you signed the HOA agreement, you gave up certain rights. This pool wasn't approved. It's my duty to report violations." I stepped between her and the kids who had stopped playing and were now huddled near the shallow end, confused and scared. "You need to leave. Right now," I said firmly. "Or I'm calling the police." She scoffed. "Call them. They'll be on my side. You'll see. You people think you can just do whatever you want and ignore the rules. You people." That's what she said. Before I could respond, she turned on her heel and marched back toward the fence, pausing only to snap one last photo of my pool. I watched in shock as she let herself out through my side gate, which I hadn't even realized was unlocked. The kids started asking questions. "Daddy, who was that lady? Are we in trouble? Is the pool going away?" My heart sank. I knelt beside them and reassured them, "No, you're not in trouble. You did nothing wrong. That lady, she was just confused. But deep down, I knew it was worse than that. This wasn't about pool compliance. This was about control. Karen wasn't just checking boxes for the HOA. She was on a personal mission to make our lives miserable. I decided to brush it off. Maybe she'd had a bad day. Maybe this was just some twisted misunderstanding. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something more was coming. And I was right. Because 3 days later, she came back with a ladder. After Karen's insane poolside meltdown, I knew she wasn't just going to walk away quietly. That woman had the energy of a courtroom drama villain mixed with a high school principal on a power trip. So I installed a security camera. It was a sleek little motion-detecting cam pointed right at the backyard and pool. Nothing fancy, just enough to keep an eye on things in case she decided to pull another stunt. And thank God I did. Thursday morning, I poured myself a cup of coffee and decided to check the overnight footage. I didn't expect to see much, maybe a raccoon or a neighbor's cat. But what I saw made my stomach drop. There she was, Karen, at 2:43 a.m. wearing black yoga pants, a long hoodie, and latex gloves. Like she was starring in her own low-budget spy movie. But it gets worse. She had brought a ladder. That's right, she dragged a foldable metal ladder across the street, leaned it against my 6-foot privacy fence, and climbed into my backyard. I watched, frozen, as she tiptoed across the grass with her phone's flashlight on. Then she walked straight to the pool, pulled out a small container from her hoodie pocket, opened the lid, and poured its contents into the water. Slowly, deliberately, like she was salting a cursed cauldron or something. I nearly dropped my coffee. I paused the video, rewound, zoomed in. I couldn't see what the label said, but it didn't matter. Whatever she dumped in there wasn't supposed to be there. And if my kids had jumped in that water the next morning, no way was I taking chances. I ran outside to check. There was a faint chemical smell, sort of sharp and sour. Not chlorine, not pool cleaner. Something else. Something off. I immediately drained the pool. All of it. 5,000 gallons. Gone. Just to be safe. Then I called the police and showed them the footage. I expected some kind of urgency. An arrest, maybe. At least a warning. But nope. We'll look into it, one of the officers said, almost like he was reading from a script. We can't confirm what the substance is from the footage alone. I couldn't believe it. She broke into my yard with a ladder, I said, pointing at the video. Isn't that trespassing? It depends, the officer said. Was your gate locked? She didn't use the gate. She climbed over my fence. He just nodded slowly. We'll file a report. Great. A report. As if that was going to stop her. The next day, I saw her walking her ridiculous little poodle around the block like nothing had happened. I couldn't resist. I walked up to her. You poisoned my pool, I said calmly. I have the footage. I've shown the police. Karen turned to me with a cold, almost amused expression. No, you doctored the footage. Anyone can fake that stuff. I'm reporting you for defamation. I blinked. Defamation? Are you serious right now? Oh, I'm just getting started, she replied. You'll regret messing with me. Then she smirked, turned her back, and walked off like some Disney villain whose plan hadn't been foiled. Yet. And you know what? She wasn't bluffing. Because what she did next? She didn't just cross the line. She lit it on fire and danced on the ashes. It was Friday evening. The house smelled like garlic bread and lasagna. My kids were laughing at the dinner table, and my wife was setting out plates. For the first time all week, things felt normal again. And then bang, bang, bang. 3 sharp knocks at the front door, heavy and official. My heart jumped. I opened the door to see 2 uniformed police officers standing on my porch. No smiles. No good evening. Just cold professionalism. Sir, one of them said, we've received a report that you're hosting an unauthorized community pool event without proper permits. I blinked. Excuse me? It's just my family swimming. The other officer raised a brow and checked his notes. There were multiple complaints of loud noise, unsupervised minors, and unsafe pool conditions. And the first officer added, the report states you threatened a member of the Homeowners Association with a weapon during a confrontation yesterday. My jaw dropped. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Wait, you think I threatened someone? With a weapon? My wife came over, concerned. What's going on? I stepped outside and closed the door behind me so the kids wouldn't hear. You've got the wrong guy, I said firmly. That report is false, and I can prove it. I pulled out my phone and opened the camera footage. I showed them everything. Karen climbing the fence with a ladder, her dumping an unknown substance in the pool, and me confronting her calmly the next day. No threats. No violence. No weapon. The officers watched silently. One of them let out a sigh. This is concerning, he muttered. But unfortunately, we still have to document the complaint. Document the complaint? I repeated, incredulous. What about her? She broke into my yard twice. She contaminated my pool. She lied to you. She's a member of the HOA, the officer replied quietly. That makes things complicated. Complicated. That word again. Apparently, when you're on the HOA board, you can trespass, harass families, and file false reports, and it all becomes complicated. They handed me a paper. Consider this a formal warning. You're not being charged with anything, but we recommend avoiding further confrontation and keeping the peace. I couldn't believe it. I was the one being warned. The victim. The guy who installed a security camera and followed the law. But Karen? She was out there somewhere, probably sipping tea and celebrating like she just won the neighborhood Hunger Games. After the officers left, I stood in the driveway for a long time. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from pure, boiling frustration. That's when it hit me. Karen wasn't just a nosy neighbor. She was playing a game. A dangerous, manipulative game. And I've been reacting instead of acting. No more. I walked back inside and told my wife, I'm done waiting for someone to save us from her. She nodded. What are you going to do? I picked up the phone and called my cousin. He's a real estate attorney with HOA experience. I need legal help, I told him. It's about an HOA board member who's gone way too far. He didn't even hesitate. Send me everything. Footage, incident reports, police files. I'll take it from here. Because this wasn't neighbor drama anymore. This was war, and I wasn't about to lose it. By the start of the next week, I was done playing defense. With the help of my cousin, the real estate attorney, I filed an official complaint with the HOA board. We compiled everything. The camera footage of Karen scaling my fence at 2:43 a.m., the video of her dumping an unknown substance into the pool, the footage of her yelling at my children, the falsified police report where she claimed I hosted a dangerous pool party, and most importantly, the 911 call accusing me of brandishing a weapon, which never happened. Everything was documented in one airtight case file. I called it the Karen dossier, and yes, I printed it with a cover and everything. I demanded a formal HOA misconduct hearing, and with legal backing and mounting pressure from other neighbors who were starting to complain about her too, the board finally agreed. But the hearing was scheduled 2 weeks later. That meant I had to survive 2 more weeks knowing Karen was still roaming around, clipboard in hand, acting like she ran the entire block. And I knew she wasn't finished. I was right. Because 1 week later, on the day of my nephew's birthday, she made one last desperate move. We were in the backyard. Just me, my wife, my kids, a few nieces and nephews. No DJ. No crowd. Just laughter, balloons, and cake. My nephew had just turned 7 and was opening his gift beside the pool. Then, out of nowhere, my daughter pointed to the fence. Dad, is that the pool lady again? I turned, and there she was. Karen, wearing her usual pastel blouse and khakis, holding the infamous clipboard and scanning the yard like a prison warden. I moved toward the gate, ready to stop her, but before I could say a word, she slipped. Her foot caught on a decorative stepping stone near the edge of the pool. She staggered, flailed the clipboard in the air, and crashed into the water headfirst. Splash. Clipboard and all. The kids froze. Everyone was silent. Until I couldn't help myself, I laughed. Not out of cruelty, but out of pure disbelief. The clipboard was floating like a sad little boat. Karen was thrashing in 3 feet of water like it was the Atlantic. I ran over and helped her out, still dripping, her mascara running down her face. Are you okay? I asked, trying to suppress another laugh. But she screamed, You pushed me. What? No, I didn't. You shoved me from behind. That's assault. Even though there were 6 adults and 3 security cameras that saw her fall completely on her own, she called the cops anyway. And guess what? This time, the police took it seriously. They arrived, watched the footage I had on my phone, listened to her latest 911 call, and then took statements from everyone present. The lead officer shook his head and said, Ma'am, not only were you trespassing, but this is the 3rd false report you filed in 2 weeks. Karen was charged on the spot for criminal trespass and for filing a false police report. She didn't scream this time. She just sat there on the curb, soaking wet, eyeliner dripping, muttering about how no one respects authority anymore. As they walked her to the squad car, one officer turned to me and said, This probably won't be the last time she tries something, but it's the first time we've seen consequences actually stick. And for the first time in this entire nightmare, I felt like justice had finally started to catch up to her. The HOA hearing wasn't just a meeting. It felt like a courtroom drama with the whole neighborhood as the audience. Chairs were lined up. People whispered to each other. A few local reporters sat in the back, flipping through notepads. Even some neighbors I'd never seen before showed up, probably hoping for a front-row seat to the HOA showdown of the decade. At the center of it all sat Karen, stone-faced, arms crossed, acting like she was the one being unfairly targeted. But then, the board began playing the footage. First, the video of Karen screaming at my kids while standing in my backyard. Audible gasp from the crowd. Then the 2:43 a.m. ladder incident. One board member actually said, "Oh my God," under his breath. Next, the pool contamination video. The 911 call where she falsely claimed I had a weapon. The birthday party fall where she slipped and blamed me for pushing her in front of half the neighborhood. The board watched in silence. No one interrupted, not even Karen. When the footage ended, I finally had my say. I stood in front of the microphone and spoke calmly. I don't hate Karen. I don't want revenge. But what she did wasn't just rude or petty, it was dangerous. She put my kids at risk, lied to the police, and tried to manipulate this community, all over a pool, all because she couldn't stand not being in control. When I sat down, the silence hung heavy in the room. Karen was given a chance to defend herself, but instead of offering an apology or explanation, she chose to attack. "These videos were clearly edited," she snapped. "You people are taking the side of someone who broke HOA rules and disrespected our bylaws. You're all sheep." The board president cleared his throat and calmly said, "Karen, we've reviewed the evidence thoroughly, multiple times. These are not isolated incidents. They are part of a disturbing pattern." Then the vote was called. All in favor of removing Karen from the HOA board permanently? Every hand went up. All in favor of a 5-year restriction from all HOA properties, including private properties within our jurisdiction? Again, unanimous. They even added a $3,000 fine for the repeated violations, legal costs, and damage she caused to community relations. Karen didn't take it well. She stood up, tears in her eyes, and shouted, "You'll hear from my lawyer. I won't let this go." But nobody flinched. Nobody argued. People just turned away from her. Some shook their heads. A few even clapped softly. She stormed out of the room, mumbling to herself about revenge and lawsuits, but the door slammed behind her like a final chapter closing. And just like that, it was over. The air felt lighter. The tension that had loomed over our block for weeks finally broke. That weekend, my kids were back in the pool, laughing like nothing had ever happened. I grilled burgers again. My wife finally relaxed. Neighbors stopped by, not to complain, but just to say hi. One of them, Mr. Jansen from 2 houses down, said, "You did the right thing. You kept your cool when most of us would have lost it." And honestly, that meant more than any HOA fine. The board replaced Karen with a reasonable, level-headed woman named Maya. First thing she did was promise that personal grudges would never again dictate policy. Second thing, she asked if she could bring her kids over for a swim sometime. I said absolutely. Just leave the clipboard at home. Sometimes the system actually does work. It just takes standing up, speaking out, and refusing to be bullied, no matter how many HOA titles they hide behind. So now, every time I sit by the pool, I take a deep breath. The chaos is behind us, and the water, it's never been clearer.